for this semester. I'm Dr. Joseph Telfair, and I am the uh, Associate Dean for Practice Research here at the Jiann-Ping College of Public Health. We welcome all of you, and we appreciate your time. And we have a very exciting presentation today from Dr. William Mase, who is an associate professor in the Department of Health Policy and Community Health here at our college. And Dr. Mase has a more than 27-year of experience working in various institutions, but with his primary focus being on what he will speak about today. So with that brief introduction, I'll let Dr. Mase turn the mic over to him and let him provide any additional information about himself as he deems fit, and then we'll go from there. Just a reminder of two things. First, Dr. Mase will speak. It will be a time for question and answer. However, if you do have questions as we go along, please provide those in the chat, if you will, and we will record those and keep track of those, and then share those with Dr. Mase as we go along. Second of all, if you come on, we ask that you mute your mic so that we can have full attention for Dr. Mase. So without further ado, Dr. Mase, the floor is yours. And thank you again for presenting for us today.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Telfair. I also want to, I noticed that Dr. Peace is on the call today, and I just want to thank Dr. Peace for setting the foundation for all of us to have the most amazing College of Public Health in the nation. Without your commitment to public health, none of us would be here. So thank you, Dr. Peace, for joining us today, as well as all of y'all. So I learned that in the last 6 years to say all of y'all now that I'm a Southerner. So today my focus, if I can get my slides to work, I framed this as management lessons from my 27 years of higher education experience, but I had to do this, which was the last minute. I realized I had to have learning objectives. You have to always have learning objectives for every session, right? So today I want to talk, hopefully get everyone to move towards thinking critically about organizational management skills, what those are, how to think more holistically about organizational management skills and how they function within the multiple organizations that you function in, not only work, but sometimes within your community lives or in your family life. Second, to understand how to best recognize and develop, how to receive direction and mentorship. That's one of the things, when I developed this presentation, I thought a lot about the mentors, directors, chairs, deans that I had over the years, and how differently all of them had their own unique style in developing people and in mentoring people. And then the third thing is to gain a deeper awareness of the organizational management, the organizational leadership, and then the organizational operations and how you fit within the organizations in which you function. So I started with this painful slide, which has way too much text on it. I'll tell you, the first two slides have all sorts of text, and then it will get much more fun and exciting from there on out. The first thing that I want to talk about, well, so here we have these management styles. And as we move through the presentation, I want you to think about different mentors, leaders, managers that you've had, and how they might exemplify these different types of organizational management styles. And I think more importantly, how you embrace and how you receive organizational management within your life, how you best thrive, what types of managers do you need to advance your growth. So the first one is a democratic management style that's rooted in collaboration. In higher education, we talk so much about collaboration, and everything that we do, we really engage with, these managers engage with their employees and are open to new ideas. Laissez-faire management style is very hands-off. These are managers who say, go do what you want to do. I'll stay out of your way, just go figure it out. I think a lot of faculty operate in this space. Often our chairs don't micromanage our work. They are very hands-off and say, go out, do your good work, and if you need help, I'm your safety net. Sometimes I do that with my doctoral students. I see a few of them on the call, so they know I do that too. Autocratic management style is centered in on results and efficiencies. These are some of the more challenging people for me personally to work with. I highlighted that often these are understood to be micromanaging, and they micromanage their employees. Some settings, an autocratic manager is very effective. In some settings, it's not so effective. A charismatic management style is characterized by highly persuasive and deeply committed to their cause, whatever that cause is. The danger with a charismatic leader is it's possible that their cause could be their own advancement and not that of the collective group or organization. But they do focus on building personal relationships and through that charismatic style. Coaching style, having grown up on a lot of teamwork, I think this is what my students would say I often use in my classes as well. A coaching style which is more focused on tailoring your results, tailoring your approaches towards building up the strengths of individuals within your team, and sometimes helping them get through their weaknesses and getting past what their weaknesses are and starting to recognize, oh, well, maybe I can turn this weakness into a strength. But that's the coaching style. Pace setting management style. I've also worked within a few organizations where the leaders have been pace setters. Often pace setters set very high standards. They set high standards for themselves and they set high standards for their teams. And the danger is it can make employees feel overwhelmed and I believe also under supported. The bureaucratic management style. Again, this is one of the least desirable, particularly in academic setting, less concerned with collaboration and more interested in following rules and processes. Having been a grant manager at a medical school, I used to be a very bureaucratic manager in those days. I would tell people, no, we can't spend that money on that. I know actually Aaron's on here, and Aaron, we applaud that we need bureaucratic functions within organizations, because if we break the rules and we lose our grants, then we're not going to be in business anymore. So bureaucratic functions are actually very beneficial because they work to streamline from the top to the bottom, and they're not necessarily all negative, and no approach is all negative or all positive. Transformational leadership style, I don't really have many examples of that in my own personal life. I think it pretty much is more of a corporate America style, but they enhance employee productivity with positive rewards. I know that I think the dean's on the call, and unfortunately, you can't just give us extra money when we do good work. So there's not a lot of external rewards, there's intrinsic rewards within our academic life. And I can say I felt that here. So I had to frame this as the Wizard of Oz. So I'm sure that there's lots of laughter when they pop the first slide up, but I'm going to take you back to 1993, where I started my journey in academic life. My first position, I had finished my master's in applied statistics from West Virginia University. And I became the director of a survey research center at the Center for Urban and Public Affairs at Wright State University. At that institution, I can say the first director, and I'm going to tell you the story, her name's Marilyn Mase, spelled different than my last name. She was a very amazing leader. She had a democratic coaching approach, which really fit well with me in my early career. Immediately when I started employment, actually was started at a 50% research assistant position, and then I moved quickly up to a research associate level position. And then I directed a survey research center that we had at that institution. So that was a great opportunity. One of the things that Dr. Mase did for me was she always made me co-PI on all the grants. She was the director of that center, and she tended to serve as PI on staff related things, because staff, her credentials helped us get grants a lot. So she would tend to serve as PI and I would serve as co-PI. Two of the big funded initiatives I had early on in my career were the BRFSS, which is the Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance Survey. At that time, you all know what that is now. At that time, that was being started in Ohio, and they needed an institution to do the data collection on that. So I ran that through our Survey Research Center for the state of Ohio. And then at that time, Ohio Department of Health was seeking a statewide youth immunization assessment survey. So that was another one of the bigger contracts that I had in that time. So this presentation, it's odd. I just wanted to tell you when I thought about Dr. Mase, she was my first supervisor, my first boss. I hate to use that term, but she was amazing. So one of the things that I remember early on, so I worked with her for 3 years, and she immediately moved up to the president's office at Wright State, and then she immediately got recruited to West Virginia University, where she served as the dean of Arts and Sciences. And then she got recruited to Clemson University, where she served as provost, and then she got recruited to Bowling Green State University, where she served as president. So it was amazing to watch her career trajectory, and I just want to give you a couple stories about my working with her. I tended to like to work early in the morning, which I still like to this day, and I tended to like to work until late at night, and I like to take Fridays off and have a 3-day weekend. So she made that happen for me. Again, she was more of a coaching type approach. She let me do whatever I wanted. Again, I worked pretty much 8 to 9 at night because the Survey Research Center, we collected most of our data from 6 p.m. until 9 p.m., which people who were in the early days of survey research, it was all by telephone. So we had a call center at that center. But the odd story I'll tell you was this negotiation. The first big contract that I negotiated with her was for the St. Elizabeth Medical Center data collection project that we got funded. And the day that we left for the negotiation with the hospital board, she said, now make sure you wear your blue suit and make sure you're ready to present. And I thought, that's an odd thing. My boss is, telling me what to wear, and that she's not presenting because she's a PhD and I'm a master's level person and I'm pretty young. So we got in the car and we're leaving for the negotiation, and she just says, now, you're presenting because these are all going to be people that look like you, and they're going to receive the message better from you, and we'll get the contract based on you. And I told her, because I had also come from, my master's thesis was on a feminist approach towards how we use language and how we think about gender in society in the 90s. Imagine that. And I said, well, that's just being part of the problem. If we just let the system function the way it is and just let people like yourself step back and not present and make me, who looks the way that the hospital administrators are going to want me to look, then I think that's a mistake. And she says, oh, this isn't a battle I'm going to choose to fight. My battles are much bigger in my life. And as you can see, she ended up being a provost and a president. So I think I actually know she fought some pretty battles. And when I came to Georgia Southern, a lot of people early on, when I did some early work again here in my first 4 years here, I worked collaboratively with other faculty, and I didn't care if I was PI or co-PI or listed down below the line of any of the PIs, because I think my battle is to get the funding into the institution. It's not to get my name to the top line. So I learned that lesson from her all early on, which was number one, choose your battle, and know what battles you're going to fight and what battles you're not going to fight. And then engage in workplace culture. The one time that Dr. Mase yelled at me, I showed up to work at early in the morning and I was doing some programming. And she said, today's strategic planning day for the department. Are you ready? And I said, yeah, I'm ready to sit at my computer and do coding all day. I don't really need to be part of strategic planning. And she stopped and she says, well, everybody needs to be part of that. And I said, yeah, I trust you all. I don't want to be part of those processes. I want to just do my own work. So she walked past me and they had strategic planning. And then that night when I was still doing my programming and she walked past me, she closed the door and she scolded me. And she said, "You don't ever get to remove yourself from being part of the process. You're part of the team. And if you don't engage in the teamwork and engage in strategic planning and engage in the visioning from where we're going, you're not being a team player." So I got in trouble pretty early, but I learned early on, it was a good lesson to engage in workforce culture and in the processes of our work. And then the third, be humble and give other people credit. That's one of the things that I always noticed about Dr. Mase. She would do everything she could to be humble. So I won't show much of this clip, but
this tracker is amazing.
One of the things that I always feel is to look back at who she was. So this is the leadership style I think she exemplified. She'd always float in on a pink bubble. And here we all were in the workspace, and then she would show up and we all respected her. And I know that people are just thinking, wow, Bill is showing a clip of the Glinda the Good Witch, but that's who Dr. Mase represented in my past life, was that she would come in and she would help us all figure out how we were going to move forward and get the work done that we needed to get done. Just a word of warning, my trip through, my journey through to Oz in my life hasn't always been filled with good witches floating in on pink bubbles. Sometimes it's been wicked witches flying in on brooms. So my second story, when I left my position, I actually got bored with my job and I needed a new challenge. So the College of Medicine was developing a Center for Healthy Communities, which is still in place. And I became the Director of Grants Management for that Center for Healthy Communities. During that time, I had only one co-PI grant with my director. During that time, the budget for that center was $800,000 when I started, and it was $2.5 million when I left. So I got to learn a lot about grants management. We had Robert Wood Johnson Foundation grant. We had a HRSA grant. We had US Department of Education grant. So early on, so again, this is pretty early in my career, but I didn't really know what grants management was. I started just reading, you know, like what are the expectations and how do you apply for this grant and what are the assurances and what's pre-award and what's post-award. I had a lot of people that helped me through that. So that experience, I sat in that position for 6 years. The other thing I'm going to say is, oddly, like I look at my life and I just had my tenured review here. So that's my 6th year at Georgia Southern. And every time I changed jobs, it was about 6 years after I started the job. So I think there's this kind of neat thing about university life where there's a 5 to 6 year trajectory towards faculty advancement. And then you have to move and grow and become something new and different. So my second supervisor was very charismatic and autocratic in her management style. So a lot of the work that we did was, again, community health grant based. During this time, probably the biggest learning I had was how the budget process works. I had to learn all about pre-award, had to learn about during award, which is post-award, and then closing a grant, which is post-award or grant closure. So it gave me the opportunity. The first position I did contract negotiation and a lot of survey work. The second position I had, again, this was for 6 years, focused on grants work and budgeting, understanding the budget. And then one of the things that is a sad lesson I learned in this job, which was people will take advantage of you in the workspace, just like they will in your personal life. And you have to be your own advocate. So that being taken advantage of was really hard. My supervisor, who I felt like I was best friends with, the one grant that I did have as co-PI during that time, at the Center for Healthy Communities was a grant on behavioral health workforce, and I was very interested in workforce development. So when we were working on that grant, I asked my supervisor if I could take responsibility for leading the writing of that grant, instead of just doing, I value all the pre and post award, but I said, I think I want to take a stab at doing all the legwork on writing the grant. So I did all that work in preparing the grant and writing the grant, and it was the first grant that I had written. And I turned it over to her with 4 days before it was due, and I got it back, and I was listed as a participant. I wasn't listed as, my supervisor was PI, and one of her friends was co-PI that was on the faculty. And I said, well, this is odd. I kind of thought I was going to be the co-PI since I did all the legwork in writing this. To which my supervisor said, well, you're just a staff person in this college and in this center, and it really isn't going to help your career to serve as a principal investigator. So I assigned it to one of my junior faculty because it will really help her career. And she really needs this for her advancement. So it was transformational in that I decided I wasn't going to work there anymore because I wasn't going to be treated as a second-class citizen when I had done the work. So again, that speaks towards grant work that I have within my life, that early lesson of being treated as less than worthy because I wasn't faculty. The one thing I can say is always respect everybody that you work with. And also be your own advocate, because if you're not, unfortunate things happen. So the person that, again, I think she had a charismatic style. She also kind of was like the Wizard of Oz behind, this was me. So when I did let her know that I was leaving, I gave her a full year of resignation so that I could transfer all the grants into someone else knowing how to manage, or where I'd managed them before. And in hindsight, I actually have told people often, like the person who was very charismatic switched and I was the enemy, and I wish I could have been the cowardly lion and run out and jumped out the window instead of waiting for a year, because it was a very tough year of my life. But then I ended up at this midpoint in my career, and I switched to the Division of Health Policy and Management, which was newly started at our college, and I'm still at the same university, which is Wright State in Dayton, Ohio. And at that School of Medicine, in the Division of Health Policy and Health Policy Management, when I started there, it was a division of 3 people, the director, and again, medical schools tend to have a kind of a parallel organizational style where there are clinical department chairs and then program directors or academic program directors, and it's a little different than a public health school. But typically I worked under the directors and not under the chairs. So my director was named the Director of Health Policy and Management, and he had a half-time program assistant and no one else. So I negotiated my way to being a research associate with him and leaving the Center for Healthy Communities and working in the Division of Health Policy and Management. And that director was very excellent for me. He had a laissez-faire management style. He pretty much just said, go figure out what you can do that's going to be fundable. So I did write 4 grants, and he served as co-PI and I served as PI on those. He was, again, very hands-off. He said, whatever you want to do, you do it. I'll stay out of your way if you need help. But I did have a lot more funding. Actually, I wrote it down there, $237,000 in grant funding as PI over those 6 years. And for our program, for our college leadership, the thing that he brought me my second year there, he said this thing called public health is really growing. I think it's a great fundraising mechanism for the College of Medicine. So why don't you figure out how to get an MPH program here? So I said, well, I don't really know what public health is and what academic public health is. So this is, again, pretty much mid-career, I start being told, although I've done a lot of public health work, we think we need this academic program in public health. So I enrolled in the public health program at Ohio State. There's this medical school motto, which is watch one, do one, teach one. So I did one. So I went through the Ohio State MPH program. I saw all the ways that the curriculum, how the curriculum worked. And as a mid-career professional, I saw how very hard it was to balance a full-time job and being a student. So then I wrote our program development plan, and my chair said, you know what, for the next year, you don't have to worry about grants, just worry about getting this through the Board of Regents. So that's a huge process, and it was super fun, and I got to work at home for that year. So that went through the Board of Regents. It got approved with a unanimous vote, including the Ohio State University, which the Dean of Ohio State, in the meeting when I had to present to the Board of Regents, said, aren't you one of our students? And I said, yeah, I am a student at the Ohio State University. He said, this is odd. It seems like you're becoming one of our competitors. So that was a reality moment. But again, it was pretty cool to be given this opportunity to develop the program. During that time, so I finished my MPH, I wrote the program development plan. I had 4 grants as PI, and I came back to my medical school where I thought I brought the broomstick to the wicked, to the wizard. And I did get called into the dean's office. So anytime you're called into the dean's office in a medical school, you usually think, well, that's going to be a really bad day. So I was pretty stressed, and I got called into the dean's office. And so at this time, I'd had my bachelor's degrees. I had my master's in applied statistics from West Virginia, and now I have an MPH from Ohio State University. So the dean calls me in and he says, we just love the work you're doing, but you're worthless to us without a terminal degree. So all of you in academic life can relate to that moment, that a terminal degree is pretty essential to push your career forward. So I looked at the dean and I said, well, I have 2 masters. Don't they equal a terminal degree? And he's like, no, for us to get you elevated to the level that you deserve to be, you have to go finish your doctorate. So again, like I was sent back to the castle to bring back another broomstick by that dean. And again, I actually loved my time at Wright State. It was really cool. So then I enrolled in the DrPH program at the University of Kentucky, and a number of you from Kentucky remember my time there. So I commuted 3 hours to Lexington from Dayton, Ohio. So I have nothing but empathy for my students who have to commute from Atlanta to Georgia Southern to participate in the best DrPH program, because it's worth the drive. And I did finish my doctorate in public health at Kentucky, and pretty abruptly, I was hard recruited to the University of Cincinnati College of Medicine. So my dean telling me I was worthless without an advanced degree, a terminal degree, moved me to get my terminal degree. And it was actually 2 months before my doctoral defense that Cincinnati had invited me to come down and give a presentation. So the difference in medical schools is like the difference in night and day. University of Cincinnati is a top 25 College of Medicine, Research One institution. Wright State is a community-based medical school with 7 community-based hospitals. No university hospital. It was a dramatic difference, and I was like, oh, this is cool. I get to step up to the big leagues. So the Scarecrow was my mentor and chair at Wright State.
Why anybody can have a brain? That's a very mediocre. Come on. odyssey. Every pusillanimous creature that crawls on the earth or slinks through slimy seas has a brain. Back where I come from, we have universities, seats of great learning, where men go to become great thinkers. And when they come out, they think deep thoughts, and with no more brains than you have. But they have one thing you haven't got, a diploma. Therefore, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the Universitatis Comitiatum E Pluribus Unum, I hereby confer upon you the honorary degree of PhD. PhD? That's Doctor of Thinkology. Some of the square roots of any two sides of an isosceles triangle is equal to the square root of the remaining side. Oh, George, I've got a brain.
So I hope some of you are laughing, but that was definitely my moment when I got my diploma. I was able to inappropriately list the Pythagorean theorem. So that said, lessons here were you can do anything that you set your mind to doing, and often our students are struggling, and I'm so thankful that I get to teach the doctoral students, the master students, and the undergraduate students, because depending on what level you're at, there's a different path and a different challenge ahead of you, but there's nothing that you can't do. This is a quote from my sister who passed away last year. At one time, I thought I was going to quit the doctoral program. It was too hard for me. And she said, earning a doctorate is hard work. If it wasn't, everyone would be called a doctor. And I miss my sister so much. And that quote from her, I always said, yep, thanks for giving me that wisdom. And the other thing that's hard, I spent 16 years of my life at Wright State University. And when you leave a job, I think you're immediately forgotten. And I just think that's a reality. It seems sad, but I think it's okay. We can only see the PowerPoint. Okay. I'm gonna see if I've done something wrong, because one of my students said that they could only see the PowerPoint. Is that working correctly? I'm gonna advance to the next slide.
Dr. Mase, we could see it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, the power of my students texting me. I'm technologically impaired sometimes. So after I jumped out the window, I jumped into the University of Cincinnati School of College of Medicine. Again, it's super aggressive and pretty intense. I loved it because I made a huge salary, and I thought that was tremendous affirmation of my worth. When I got there, I was the associate program director and assistant professor. Within 3 months, my department chair called me in and said, would you like to be the program director? And I said, well, somebody has that job. And my chair said, well, I don't like the way that person's behaving, so they're not going to have that job much longer. And I would like you to do that. And I said, well, you know, and when your supervisor says, I'm going to dismiss some faculty member and you're called on, it's kind of like you don't really say no, because you know that person has that kind of power to do whatever they want to do. So that was, again, so I defended my dissertation and in November. And in November, that was when my chair said that I had to become the director in January. And I had to do all the work that I had to do to become tenured. So during that next 6 years, I directed the academic program. I had 9 grants as PI for $7.7 million, but I had 0 publications. I was just not doing anything in the realm of publishing. I personally just struggled with that, and managing all my grants and managing my work and managing an academic program that had to go through accreditation. So it was really hard. So the lessons I learned at that institution, so I think I covered, so my director got canned, I got thrown into the job. I did carry their academic program through accreditation very successfully. They got CEPH accreditation for the maximum number of years. And then I started my job search, and I do end up at Georgia Southern. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about the two supervisors I had. One, the first supervisor was very bureaucratic and pace setting. Again, I think this pace setting theme, my second supervisor, so let me finish the story. So the person who was my department chair who dismissed the director and put me in place, again, another bad moment. I got called into the dean's office in the School of Medicine, in the College of Medicine. And I thought, oh, this can't be bad. So my dean said, I'm going to restructure the Department of Public Health in the academic center. And I want to know if you're going to still continue to be program director and who you need on the faculty to be with you in the restructure. And I said, well, why aren't you talking to my chair? And he said, well, the chair is not going to be part of that journey that we're taking in the future. You're going to be placed in the Department of Environmental Health. And at Cincinnati, the Department of Environmental Health is huge. It was the founding department that set up the EPA in the United States. So they have the oldest occupational medicine residency in the nation. Again, I was like, oh, wow, we're going to environmental health and my chair is going to be let go. And I didn't even know you could let tenured faculty go. And it got really crazy. So I ended up in a different department. So my first chair was, again, one of the,
it's in your nature to push.
Sorry, I'm going to pause because this is going to run a commercial.
It's in our nature to push you further.
So my first chair was always celebrating, and we had lots of events celebrating that the MPH program was set up, and that we were collaborating with 7 colleges at the University of Cincinnati, and that we had gone through accreditation. And he was eventually floated off in a balloon. We all know that clip, and he ended up back in Oz, I think. My second supervisor, again, which was lessons learned, was that Research One, top 25 medical colleges can be toxic and very destructive places to work. It was funny, I worked in the Department of Environmental Health, and I always said, boy, it's fun. I get to be studying toxic environments every day of my life. One of the things that my immediate subordinate, my assistant program director, was terminated one day when I didn't expect it. And she asked me, do you live to work or work to live? And I've always carried that with me. And the 12th lesson I learned was walk away from toxic people, because when you're working in a setting that at any moment a wicked witch could fly into your office on a broomstick and wreak havoc through your life, that's just not the way to motivate people. So I thought she was dead. So yeah, my first department chair was bad, and then I got a different department chair, and she was worse than the other one. So that was that journey. And summing them up, and my late career life, again, this is my 27th year. I pretty much define myself as late career now. I've had 11 grants as co-PI or PI here at Georgia Southern. I'm very thankful. I've had a lot of work with Dr. Jiann-Ping. I actually believe she's my mentor. I've had a lot of work with Dr. Tedders. These are the grants. I should have listed everybody in the whole college, but Dr. Opuku and Angie, I know I shouldn't have listed anyone's name because now I feel horribly guilty that I left people off. But early on, Dr. Jiann-Ping was so supportive of me. And I think she also has that belief of whatever it takes to get the grant, whether I'm on the top line, the second line, or on the team line, I'm on for that team approach. To date, Georgia Southern calculated it up the other day, $2.289 million in grants and contracts. And a lot of those are as co and on teams. Summing all these lessons up, number one is to choose your battles. Number two is to engage in workforce culture and processes. And I know in COVID-19 times, that's hard, but we're figuring it out one day at a time. Number three, to be humble and give other people credit, and also to take credit when it's credit due. Four, to develop an understanding of how the budget works. It gives you power. And I know talking with leaders here at Georgia Southern, one of the things that I knew from Wright State, I don't have a lot of budget money when I was academic program director of public health, but our academic program brought in, I think my first year it brought $1.5 million to the university, and then we got an allocation of that, which is based on a formula, and I had to learn those formulas as a program director. So understanding the budget process, hard tuition money is always best. In Ohio, it was calculated on a 2-year biennium. So whatever we did in the previous 2 years was the estimate of our budget for the next 2 years. So it was always hard because you started out low and it went high. We did have an executive program at Wright State. So we collected a lot of extra money for a executive-based MPH program, and we made a lot of money off of that. And making money, I can say we also served our students very effectively. The program was tailored towards in-career students, and it was all evening courses and distance learning before distance learning was very popular. 5, as hard as it is, people will take advantage of you. 6, given that people will take advantage of you, you must be your own advocate. Number 7, you can do anything you set your mind to doing. For those students out there, bachelor's, master's, and doctoral, earning whatever degree you're going for is hard work, and you can do it. You just got to set your mind to it. 9, when you leave a job, you're immediately forgotten. And I struggled with putting that on there because it sounds so negative, but I actually believe it's important to know that when you leave something, you've done your best, and you can move on, and you don't really have to be part of that anymore. You can be part of the new thing. Number 10, that research 1, top 25 medical colleges are toxic and destroy your serenity. When I came to Georgia Southern, I think a lot of people saw me in my medical school mode. I used to come in at 7 or 8 in the morning, and I would stay till 7 or 8 at night. Actually, Belinda Classen stopped me one time, and she's like, I don't want to imitate her voice because I love her voice, and I do a pretty good Belinda imitation, but she just said, Dr. Mase, you've got to learn to relax. We don't behave that way. It's crazy how you behave. And she actually called me into the dean's office like the second month I was here, and she says, you need to settle down. And it took me at least a year or 2 to figure out, like, oh, you know, people aren't chained to their desks here. It's actually a really healthy environment, and there's work-life balance here. Do what you love and love what you do. Do what you like and like what you do. I didn't know starting out that I would be in public health, and so many of our students don't really know that, but I do love it. I actually started out studying corrections. I wanted to be part of prison reform, and I didn't get that opportunity, but I've loved my journey in public health. And walk away or stand up to witches. A lot of times in our lives, we don't realize how just standing up and being an advocate for the right path is really important. So I set this up this morning. I'm sorry I didn't get Ariel. I know you reviewed all my work. My grad assistant reviewed all my slides, but you didn't get to see this one. But I put all the bubbles up, and I thought it was important to link this back to community and to organization at the larger level. So I had some questions like, what management type will help you in your journey? And I put the little bubble with Dorothy because she's in Kansas, which is, as many people think, Ohio and Kansas are pretty close, like they're so close. Well, actually they're not, but they are somewhere between New York City and Los Angeles. So they're close in the realm of people in the world think that everything in the Midwest is the same. But given that I was in that little bubble in Ohio, I didn't really know where I was going to go with my journey, but I did move forward, and the community that I was in didn't necessarily have to be the community that I was going to be in for the rest of my career. So what are the leader community dynamics within any organization? So I put this down, and it's kind of a metaphor for bigger pictures. And I'm going to say, so leadership in Kansas, Dorothy's family, for those that know the Wizard of Oz, were pretty dismissive of her and didn't pay attention to her, and she felt underappreciated. So she moved on, and then she took this big journey. So Munchkinland, which is at the top right, there's no walls in Munchkinland. Actually, there's a red brick road and a yellow brick road. I've always wondered where the red brick road goes, but there's roads out and there's roads in, and sometimes people float in on bubbles and sometimes people drop in bursts of smoke under a broom. But Munchkinland is open. When you look at the Emerald City, it's actually closed. So there's a lot of walls in the Emerald City, and you just can't really get in unless the doorman lets you in. And Emerald City is like the witch's castle. She has a drawbridge. And I thought about this kind of wrapping up. I thought, when we do our work, well, our work has to be past walls. Our work has to be beyond bridges. When we do our work, it has to be fully engaging of communities. And that's how we are truly different than any other academic department at this institution or within higher education, is that we have to leave the academy and we have to go into the community to do our work. And when you look at the work settings, and the reason I put that up, medical schools actually are walls. They often don't leave the bounds of an academic medicine environment, and they don't really do applied public health work. So having spent 25 years in that type of a setting, coming into a non-academic public health setting where you could cross the bridge, where you could walk down the sidewalk and be in the community and make a difference, was super transformational for me. So I am done with my presentation, and I'm sorry I didn't leave a lot of time for questions and I didn't time myself. So I will ask Dr. Telfair what you want to do for the last, I'm sorry, 8 minutes.
No problem. Anyway, I just want to thank you very much for your presentation and your wisdom that you shared with us today, Dr. Mase. We have one question that was sent a while back, and I will start with that one. And then if others want to put their questions, please add them to the chat and we will go from there. So the first question was from Dr. Shah, and he asked, are these mutually exclusive styles, or can a manager mix and match these styles based on functional units within an organization? Your
Absolutely.
wisdom,
I think the best managers can identify what strategies their subordinates need and mix and match those to meet the styles that are appropriate for the subordinates. That said, I kind of labeled my supervisors as one type. I personally, from observing it in my career, I think different managers are naturally oriented, like you're either right-handed or left-handed. I suppose people can be ambidextrous, but there's a natural propensity for people to go down one path that works for them. And so I think they can change it up, and they can change it within that one person. And I think those are the most successful managers. I think the least successful managers are the ones that always push the same approach and follow that same dogged path. Like, I'm going to be really rigid. I'm going to put the hammer down. I'm going to have these high expectations. I think that's appropriate sometimes, but it's also appropriate to coach people in how to get results. I hope that answers it.
I don't see any other questions at the moment, so I will ask the other questions there. So Dr. Mase, thank you for sharing your journey. As you have reflected on these management styles, can you describe your style and why that works best for you, particularly given your experience and where you are now?
Absolutely. My personal desired style is coaching style. Everything that I do seems to be team-based in my academic life, in my community life. So, and I had coached some high school activities when I was able to carve out time early in my career. So coaching is really natural to me. So I would definitely say my preferred style is coaching, because I think that approach for me, each individual on a team has a role to play, and each role and each individual come with their own strengths and their own limitations, and to help people realize, oh, well, if this is a limitation, you can either ignore it or you can attend to it. So coaching would definitely be my preferred approach towards managing.
Okay, thank you, Dr. May. So we have one other question from Dr. Fung. He asked, it appears that your experience in medical school has been quite negative. However, would this be possible that such an environment is also suitable or natural for other people, but just not you?
So the first medical school was not negative at all. One of my supervisors had a negative approach, which helped me move on and advance my career and change my direction. So I can say that the University of Cincinnati was a negative experience for me. I think that, as odd as this is to say, like that, for those of you that know the Wizard of Oz, I actually think that when the people that were teaching there and doing research there really looked at themselves, I think they would have seen themselves as the prison guards, and that they needed to be liberated. And I think it was negative largely for everyone. And I think a lot of those people that had long careers there felt trapped. There was a saying at Cincinnati, you're either on your way up or on your way down. Nobody stays the same. And the on your way up was typically people that moved on to become chairs, deans, associate deans at other institutions that were better, or people that were on their way down. And when they were on their way down, they were just struggling. So I think the culture of a medical school is, I think the culture of any institution is what it is. You never know the culture until you're inside. Coming to Georgia Southern, I had no clue what the culture here would be. I did interview for multiple faculty positions when I did my job search, and it was authentically what I experienced in the interview. I was like, oh my gosh, that seems like a great place to work, and everybody is kind and generous, and that's what I found when I came here. So I'm not sure if I'm answering the question, but I can just say, yeah, I made a mistake when I went to Cincinnati for money. Every mistake comes with learning, and I did my best to learn, but it was a rough environment. And I know there's other faculty who've served. I know Dr. Sullivan served in a medical school. She's the only one Dr. Tedder served in a medical school. To be in a medical school and be terminal degreed in public health means you will always be considered a second-class citizen. And I'll wrap it up with that, if that's a good answer. Well, it's my answer.
Well, Dr. Mase, you have many thank yous for your presentation, and thank you for your words. And I would encourage everyone to write Dr. Mase if you have additional questions, and we will leave it at that. I also want to bring to everyone's attention, we have another Grand Rounds next week, Dr. Kelly Chester. We have sent out the notices for that, and we want to remind everyone to please attend if you can. So again, I want to send a sincere congratulations and thank you on your presentation, Dr. Mase, and we hope that we will get a chance to hear from you at another time as you continue your work. And I can speak for all of us here at Georgia Southern. We're very grateful for the opportunity. So thank you very much. And thank you everyone who've attended this presentation today. And we welcome you back next Wednesday to our seminar series. Thank you very much. And we will close it at that. Thank you. And be safe, be well.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Dr. Mase. It was excellent presentation.